Mr. President, it is often said that foreign aid from America is to project American power, to project the things that America believes in. Unfortunately, over decades, the only thing consistent about foreign aid is that the money continues to flow regardless of the behavior of the recipients. This is extraordinary, and we've seen this decade after decade. Studies will show often that 75% of foreign aid throughout many continents is simply stolen, taken in graft. The Mubarak family in Egypt is an example of this. The point I would like to make today is that if we are going to project what America stands for, that if we want our money to go to people who are supporting activities that America is for, we should write that into the law. Now, we've made attempts at this in the past. Senator Leahy, several years ago, attached to foreign aid an amendment that says that countries need to be evolving towards democracy or showing an ability to go forward towards democracy. The problem is that every time we have restrictions on foreign aid, they're evaded. We always give an out. Presidents always got an out. So this week in Egypt, 683 people were condemned to death in one trial, and yet your money still flows to Egypt without interruption. We have another contingency that says if a country has a military takeover, if you have an election and then you have a military junta or a military takeover of the government, that our aid should end. Didn't happen in Egypt. We had a military takeover. The only thing consistent about foreign aid is that it flows to all countries regardless of behavior. So it's the opposite of what many of the proponents say. Many of the proponents say, we do this so we can modulate behavior, so we can try to improve and make things better around the world. And yet they steadfastly oppose restrictions on foreign aid. So I have a bill that I'm going to ask in a few minutes for the Senate to unanimously approve. This is a bill that should be an easy lift for most senators. This is a bill to support our ally Israel and to say to the Palestinian Authority that in order to receive American money, if you wish to continue to take, and many people don't realize this, but the American taxpayer gives hundreds of millions of dollars every year to the Palestinian Authority, and we supposedly have restrictions, but there's always an out, and guess what? They always get their money regardless of behavior. So what I've been asking is, let's have some restrictions. If we're going to give money to the Palestinian Authority, shouldn't they agree to recognize the state of Israel? Shouldn't that be part of what goes on with this? We now have a problem, and the reason why this has become a more pertinent issue and something that's come to the forefront is you have Hamas, a terrorist group in Gaza, now allying themselves with Fatah, the people who run the Palestinian Authority. So my question is, are we now going to send money to a unity government? Part of the charter of Hamas is not only just not recognition of Israel, but actually for the destruction of Israel. So what I would ask to Americans and what I would ask to those who will object to this bill, because there will be an objection to my bill today, I would ask to those who object is, how can you object to something that calls for the recognition of Israel as a state? How can you object to and how can you continue to allow the flow of money to a group that calls for the destruction of Israel? And they will say, well, we've got contingencies for that and we'll stop it if they become part of or control the West Bank. When I was in Israel a year ago, I asked everybody this question. I met with the Prime Minister of Israel. I met with the President of Israel. I met with the King of Jordan. I met with the leader of the West Bank, Abbas. I met with all these people and I asked them, can there be a separate peace? Can there be peace with the West Bank and peace with Gaza, a separate peace? And they all said, no, it has to be one peace. And I said, if they're unified, will you negotiate with Hamas to the Israeli side? And they said, no. They lob missiles at us. They are at war with us. They don't recognize our right to exist as a state. Not only that, they openly advocate for the destruction of Israel. But realize, in the objection you will hear today, you will hear an objection that despite arguments to the contrary, will allow money to go to a unity government that will include Hamas. I'm simply asking that if we're going to send good money after bad, frankly, money we don't have. We're $1 trillion in debt. We got bridges falling down in our own country, and your government is sending hundreds of millions of dollars to Palestinian Authority, now going to be unified with Hamas, and without restrictions, or with restrictions that have a hole so big you can drive a truck through the restrictions. This always happens. Every contingency, every limitation on foreign aid that you would think would be practical and reasonable always has an exception for the president to overcome. The president always does it, so the only thing consistent about foreign aid is the money continues to flow. So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I would ask unanimous consent that we pass my bill, Senate Bill 2265, Stand with Israel. I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Foreign Relations be discharged from further consideration of S 2265 and that the Senate proceed to immediate consideration. I further ask that the bill be read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?